Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem amma ba'd fa'auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I welcome you to program Understanding Quran, the Word of Allah, and this is Dr. Kanwal Kaisser. We finished off, or in fact we talked about Juz 18, which covers 3 surahs. One is Surah Al-Mu'minun, second is Surah Nur, and then the initial verses of Surah Al-Furqan. And I told you that they are very much linked together when we're trying to work on our personality. Surah Al-Mu'minun basically talks about how you build your iman, your faith in your own personality. And the parameters had been given in that. Then in Surah Nur, we talk about enlightenment in the society, and again, what are the different conditions which have been set or different boundaries which have been set up for all of us to practice in the society. And then we move down to Surah Al-Furqan. I finished off on Surah Nur because I wanted to take up Surah Furqan, the initial even 20 verses which are in Juz 18 with Juz 19. So we will be covering Juz 19 starting from Surah Furqan with initial verses in Juz 18. So Surah Furqan, if you look at it, this came in the mid time of the Meccan period. That was the time when the persecution by the Meccan people towards the Muslim was at its peak. So a lot of warnings have been given in this surah to the people who were not listening to the message and were also being extremely harsh towards the Muslims. So Surah Furqan, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Tabarakallazi nazzala al-furqana ala abdihi liyakunu li'alamina nazira. Blessed is the one who has revealed Al-Furqan, the Quran, to his servant that he may be warner to the worlds. Now, very important message has been given over here that Quran has been revealed as a Furqan. Furqan, you can say, is a dividing line in which it helps you distinguish between right and wrong. So, moving on from Surah Al-Mu'minun, when you have worked on yourself, then Surah Nur, when you are working in the society, that gives you this feeling, this sense of right and wrong, which is very much important for all of us to practice in the society. And this is what we say is the moral understanding when you are living in a society. And this is the goal of the moral education, basically, that if we are able to appreciate the beauty of the religion, and yes, in our practices, in any given scenario, we understand what am I supposed to be doing and what I'm supposed to be refraining from. And this is something that we have to instill in our children as well. And this is the integral part of the moral wisdom that we talk about. And how do you work on this moral understanding so that you have Furqan? The first principle I would say is we have reached till 18th and 19th Juz, and that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about Furqan, meaning all the principles, all the list of do's and don'ts, all the understanding of the religion that we had in the initial 17 to 18 days, first we have to start practicing that. So more you practice religion, that's when you will see the beauty, and it would be like a scanner in front of your eyes. In any situation, there will be an inner voice which will tell you, do it, don't do it. And this will be like an important component of your day-to-day activities. So the first and foremost, this moral compass becomes very active from this moral testimony that is there in Quran. The more you connect to the scripture, the more you will build in this system what am I supposed to do and say and what I have to refrain from. Second is your own perception, your gut feeling, your insight also gets sharpened. Many a times I've heard people say, I'm such a fool, and I was supposed to say this thing, or I was supposed to do this thing, or I was not supposed to say or do this thing, but I ended up making a big blunder. So if you are a student of Quran and if you're connecting to this divine message, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to guide you by taking you through various experiences, and this is going to add on to this quality inside you. So the verse moves on, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, Allazi lahu mulku samawati wal ard, wa lam yattakhiz walad, wa lam yakul lahu sharikun fil mulk, wa khalaqa kulla shay'in faqaddarahu taqdira. He is the one to whom belongs the kingdom of the heavens and the earth. He has begotten no son and has no partner in the kingdom. He has created everything and ordained them in due proportion. Another important concept that I would like to highlight over here is فَقَدَّرَهُ تَقْدِيرًا. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about qadar and how everything has been proportioned nicely. Now, what is this qadar? Because many times people are stuck in this concept, and in fact they are not able to understand the divine scripture just because they are not able to understand qadar. We find out that the Prophet ﷺ, when he was questioned by the companions about the qadar, he told them not to go too much into try to have in-depth knowledge of qadar. Just understand the basic principles and stick to those principles, because this is something from the divine scripture. This is a law that has been established by the Creator, and we cannot match the level of knowledge and intellect and wisdom that the Creator has. But what should be there for our understanding? What are the bare minimum principles that we should understand? Allah has decreed everything that happens in the universe, and everything that is happening, He has prior knowledge of everything through His knowledge and through His wisdom. Then everything has been written down in the book of decree, which we call Lawh-e Mahfuz. We find out in a hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote down the decree of creation 50,000 years before He created heavens and the earth. Now imagine, like sometimes we have to make a 20-year ahead plan and we fail. And many a time, even if we are too good at planning and our insight and gut feeling is good, and we make a 20-year plan, but we end up in a different direction. It's a successful direction, but we end up saying that I was heading towards this thing and this was what I was trying to strive for, and there was a different plan for me, and this master plan came into action. So it is hit and trial thing which is happening for us. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written down everything 50,000 years ago, it was all precise, everything. Like right now, whatever you're doing, it had been written down 50,000 years before the creation came. So add up all the rest of the years as well. Second thing we find out, another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said the first thing that Allah created was the pen, and He said to it, write. And pen said, O Lord, what should I write? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, write down the decrees of all things until the hour begins. So everything had been written down, and everything has been written down very precisely, like our age, our sustenance, provision, risk, what kind of actions we are going to perform, who is going to be a good guy or who is going to be a bad guy. So everything is written down. Now the question comes over here that if everything is happening with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if everything has been written down, then why make all this effort? Then I'm probably helpless, because for me it has been written down that in this year at this time I'm going to be engaged in a certain sin. Now over here we need to understand a fine line between whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed and where do we have this free will, the concept that has also been given to us. Now in any given situation you have to understand we have a choice. Now we don't have a choice over the things where we are not accountable for, but we have a choice in any given situation on all the factors where we are accountable for. I'm not accountable for, or I don't have a choice over my money because that is ordained from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not accountable for my life because my lifespan has been decided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not accountable for my blood relatives the way they are because that has been chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's in my qadar, precisely designed and planned for me. But I have a choice how I spend my money, on halal or haram. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows it through His knowledge that where I'm going to spend it, but He has given me a choice in that. How I treat my relatives is my personal choice, because I'll be held accountable for all my dealings with different people. The concept of kinship, the sila rahmi and the qata rahmi has been described. So we have to understand that we are accountable for all the action we take. That is what Surah Furqan tells us. You need to understand and differentiate between the right and wrong in any situation, and then learn to apply all those principles. Then we move down to this Juz 19, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts Juz 19 with verse number 21 of Surah Al-Furqan. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَرْجُونَ لِقَاءَنَا لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْنَا الْمَلَائِكَةُ. Those who do not expect to meet us on the Day of Judgment say, why are not the angels sent down to us? Or why do we not see our Rabb? Certainly they are too proud of themselves and have revolted in a great revolt. So over here, what do we find out? That this is like the attitude of the people who do not understand the message of Quran. They are asking for something which is beyond them, and they are expecting those things, a long list of demands that they always put up. But for us, there is a passage, these are the verses which are extremely important, and we need to specially ponder over them. These are verse number 25 to 31. On the day when the heavens shall burst asunder with the cloud, and angels will send down ranks after ranks, and the real kingdom on that day will belong only to Ar-Rahman, the compassionate. A hard day shall it be for the unbelievers. On that day, now that's the point, that's the catch point that I'm coming to, and please listen to this very carefully, because this is one of the issues in our life all the time, and especially parents are juggling with this issue, and they go to all the experts asking this question. So the answer has been given over here for the question. So what we find out over here is, on that day the wrongdoers will bite his hands, and he will say, oh, ya laytani ittakhaztu ma'ar rasuli sabila. He will say, would I had only taken the pathway alongside the Rasul. Over here, the person is going to be in deep regrets, biting on his knuckles, saying, why didn't I pick up, why didn't I choose the path, Sunnah way of life? Why did I look down on the life of Sunnah? Why did I make fun of the religion in my life? And it doesn't stop over there. The diagnosis has been elaborated. The next verse says, Ya waylata laytani lam attakhiz fulanan khalila. Oh, would that I had never chosen so and so for my companion. The peer pressure, the best buddy. I wish I hadn't hung out with this person. And why? Again, the reason has been given over here. He was the one who led me astray from the admonition, even after it has reached me. So this was the person who got in touch with Quran, but the kind of company he was hanging out with, that's where he got all the impact, and he didn't want to follow the way of Quran and Sunnah. That's what overhead said, that and وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي إِنَّ قَوْمِي اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ مَحْجُورًا. And the Rasul will say, oh my Rabb, surely my people took this Quran for foolish nonsense. That is how we made for every Rasul an enemy among the criminals. But your Rabb is sufficient for you as a guide and a helper. As I said, that very important principles have been talked about. We're talking about right and wrong. We're talking about Furqan having in our life. And Furqan is the choice of friends. Why? Because there is a hadith which tells us that a man is upon the religion of his best friend. So let one of you look at him who he befriends. So this is the choice we have to make. And as I told you, that you talk to parents in any gathering, and their biggest concern is the choice of friends their kids have. And sometimes they're looking at their kids' friends and they're having a heart attack because of the look and feel of their friends. And yes, definitely the kids are going to take an impact. Let's talk a little bit about peer pressure over here, because this is a pressure which is exerted by a person or a group, or it could be a same age for fellow, or it could be the whole societal pressure that is coming. And when you experience that pressure, when you have similar interest and same kind of experiences around you, and that is going to influence your choices and the behaviors. So this is a human nature, that we listen to our friends, and a lot of stress comes to us because of our peers. What experts say about peer pressure is, it's not like you take up that, like your friends are influencing you directly. It could be just an unsaid kind of a pressure, because you want to fit in. A person who wants to fit in the society is going to look up at a cool gang or a cool person around in the society, and just to be in the company of that person is going to follow all the norms of that group. It will also depend upon the temperament of the person, and what kind of an impulse control a person has. These are going to be the contributing factors. But a lot of risk factors are attached. People end up into drugs, into haram relationship, into bad habits, into bad choices, even for their career, and when they are living in the moment and they are not able to understand how they appreciate the life, the beauty of life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. So for the parents, I would like to give them one advice, that do not be critical towards your kid's friend. They're not going to give up on their friend. They're going to give up on you. They're going to start hiding their friendships from you. But what you can do is follow these verses, sit down and talk to your kid and see how much furqan they have, how much they can differentiate between the right and wrong. See, we have to understand all of us are a package. We are a package of goodness and we are a package of some issues. So you have to help your children see the beauty of that package. You have to tell them to appreciate what goodness exists in their friend, and at the very same time you have to guide your kids to also refrain from all the wrong things that their friends are indulged in. And that's where you have to teach them how they exert a positive peer pressure on them, because over here it especially talks about leaving Quran, and this is one thing we have to understand. If you have a friend, this is a yardstick for us to understand that if our friend is bringing us closer to Quran and Sunnah or not interfering with our practices, he is a good friend to hang out with. But if he is mocking religion or not letting us be religious, then it is something that we have to take as a warning. And it is not just for the kids, it's for us as well. All of us, we hang out with our friends, so we have to see what kind of company am I choosing. Especially over here, it has been talked about that what they do is mahjura, they leave Quran. So what is this leaving Quran? One, you don't do the daily recitation. You never have time for it. You are hanging out with your friend, chit-chatting, coffee mornings, tea parties, get-togethers, and talking endlessly on WhatsApp and social media and phone calls, but you don't have time to even do the recitation of one ruku of Quran. Then not believing in it, because your friends, they are skeptic about it, they are into ifs and buts about it, and they keep voicing themselves, or not practicing according to those principles that are the halal and haram which are given over here, and not making it supreme authority in your life, not pondering over the message that is given in Quran. You never have time for that, because it's a movie night out with your friends, or it's a time when you have to hang out with your friends and talk about, have some intellectual conversation. And yes, also using Quran as a form of treatment, and this is like which is highly recommended from the times of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So then we move down and the story of Musa alayhi salam begins. And in this story we find out there is a verse which tells us again the issues when we are trying to have this furqan. Right and wrong decision making, for that we have to understand qadar. Second important principle we have to understand is the friendship, the criterion for friendship. And third thing that has been given over here is in verse number 43. Ara'aita man ittakhaza ilahahu hawahu. Have you ever seen the one who has taken his own desires as his God? Would you take the responsibility of guiding him? Now over here, this is an important thing again to understand. You know, many times why we don't have furqan, why we cannot appreciate something which is right and something which is wrong, because we are badly caught up in our desires. Let us try to understand a little bit from this perspective as well. So what is a desire? It's a strong feeling of wanting to have something or wishing for something to happen. It's like a desire which is driving you crazy, nuts. You cannot see beyond that. You have a tunnel vision at that time. You are not able to understand any principle. So people have desire for fame, for benevolence, for money, for admiration, for popularity. They even have desire for power. And what they do is, because of this, they land into a self-destructive trap. The trap says, dress up the way you want to, have the kind of food you want to, get engaged in the relationships as you desire to have. Then you have addictive patterns and follow those addictive patterns. And people have mismanaged emotion because of the desire, and our spirituality becomes so superficial. It's just like for a while we are seasonal Muslims, and after that we are hanging out with the regular crowd that and who are loaded with their desires, and we carry slogans like dil nahi chahta, I don't feel like doing it, dil ke haathon majboor, I'm just like, my desires are killing me, and jo ji chahe karo, do as you want to do. So these are the desire slogans that we carry with ourselves, and because of the desire, all the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are pushed on the side. And that is why we have been asked to be very careful. Like these days, in the days of Ramadan, what you can do is you can assess all your desires, like what's my status at the time of Fajr prayer? Am I able to give up my desire of sleeping, get up, have my sahur, and then pray, and then do my zikr, and then do recitation of Quran? Okay, how do I take my fasting? Am I able to control not only the eating and drinking, but also other desires around? Like some people, they fast and they are like watching all the top 10 movies the whole day. Then what about Hajj? I have seen people who want to have a comfortable life, and because of that they say, I cannot afford to go for Hajj because of the bathroom uses over there, or I get claustrophobic when I look at all these masses of people around. Then people, they are not able to control their sexual desires, and because of that they are just hanging out with the opposite sex all the time, and it's like one relationship after the other. So this kind of attitude will not let you have a good life, and this attitude is going to be a killer for you. So how do we shape our desires? Either according to the social norms, and it will also depend upon whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, and the need for love also plays a role in our desires. And yes, low self-esteem is going to make you hang out with all your desires. But desire and contentment, they're the flip side of the coin. So what you do is you turn your desire into contentment through your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and bringing it into a structure and a framework. And that is why Islam teaches us self-control, it teaches us self-discipline and self-purification. If we start working on that, we enjoy the halal desires, the baseline desires, and we try to improve and groom our personalities. So we move on, and in verse number 52, another important concept has been talked about, and that is jihadan kabira. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is motivating us that, you know what you need to do? Jihadan kabira. What is this jihadan kabira? Which is a bigger form, a massive form, or a mighty form of a jihad that we should be indulged in. Now this is spreading the message of Quran. Why? Because a lot of issues that we have talked about so far, they are going to be there in the society if people are so afraid and scared of connecting to this divine scripture. Now understand this thing. Whenever I talk to people and I say, why don't you try to study Quran? And they say, yes, we do feel like studying Quran, but we are so afraid that we'll be talking about heaven and the hell, and we'll be talking about how to transform our life, but how will we survive in this life? And it's a scary concept. You have to understand, when we say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, we started Surah Al-Fatiha by Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, the God who is so kind and merciful. How can He give us a system which is going to bring problems and issues in our life? So jihad and kabira is required, because in this era of development, human race is seeking something which people have been seeking since they landed on this planet, this earth, that is peace. Have some peace in their life. And the irony is, man has reached moon, man has dug out deepest treasures, man has invented, understood cosmos, invented artificial intelligence, and applying those principles in so many spheres. It's a robotic time that we have, but yet we are unable to find out solution to all the conflicts in our society, the individual conflicts as well as international conflicts, and there is no peace in the society. And that is why people, when they want peace, they go towards drugs, they go towards haram entertainment, all forms of thrills that they want to acquire. But over here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is jihad and kabira. If we spread out the message of Quran, if we genuinely tell people, come towards Quran, understand Quran, and understand and appreciate how Quran is guiding us towards the beauty of all the relationships. So ultimately, towards the end of Surah Al-Furqan, we come to another important principle, that is the personality of a person who is transformed, who understands the right and wrong. And the verses are from 61 to 77, just towards the end. And that's the quality of Ibadur Rahman, that is the true servant of Allah, the compassionate, are those who walk on earth in humility. And when the ignorant people pass through them, they say, Qalu salama. They just give them the message of peace. Then they are prostrating day and night in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are standing in prayers and they make this dua, Rabbana asrif anna azaba jahannam, inna azabaha kana gharama, inna sa'at mustaqarran wa muqama. O Rabb, ward off the punishment of hell from us, for it is an evil punishment. It is the punishment is atrocious. Certainly it is an evil abode and an evil resting place. And then there is a list of things that they're doing. They're talking about their spending, they're talking about their maintaining their chastity, they're very particular about their dealings, earning of the good deeds, and towards the end, there are like almost 11 qualities that had been talked about, massive qualities. And then even when they pass through difficult areas and situations, they go through all those places where the haram activities are taking place in a very dignified manner. And the surah is ending off with a very beautiful dua. رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. And they make this dua, O Rabb, make our spouses and our children to be the comfort of our eyes and make us leaders of the righteous. So it boils down to the moment you have the right concept of right and wrong in yourself, Furqan, you not only are benefiting the society, you're also benefiting yourself and you're bringing stability in your life. Then we move on to Surah Shura. This is a surah which is a Makkan surah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Tasin Mim. Tilka ayatul kitabil mubin. Tasin Mim, these are the verses of the glorious book. And O Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you will perhaps fret yourself to death with grief because they do not believe. This talks about how the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam cares so badly for everyone that he wants them to listen to the message. This is a surah in which there is a verse which has been repeated 8 times. There are 2 verses. Inna fi zalika la ayat wa ma kana aktharuhum mu'minin wa inna rabbaka lahuwal azizul rahim. Surely in this there is sign, yet most of them do not believe. In fact, your Rabb is mighty as well as He is merciful. So in this we find out there is a constant reminder through the stories in which we have the story of Musa alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Nuh alayhi salam, Hud, Saleh, Lut, Shuaib alayhi salam, so many prophets and so many messages. And in the end, after every story, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, wa inna rabbaka lahuwal azizur rahim. Allah is mighty. Allah doesn't need to show mercy in all these situations, but He is showing mercy. So do not misuse or do not take mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your own good. And then in the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, we find out a beautiful dua that he made, and that is when he says in this dua, we find out he says, wa iza marastu fahuwa yashfini, and when I'm sick, you are the one who bring me back from towards health. And this is the one dua that we should be making and seeking Allah's help whenever we are sick. It doesn't mean that we cannot take medication, but our reliance should be more on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than on anything else. Another dua that has been mentioned over here, Rabbi habli hukman wal hikni bis salihin. O my Rabb, bestow wisdom upon me and admit me among the righteous. Another beautiful dua. Many a time people say, I'm such a blunderous person, I'm talking to someone and I end up saying the most worst thing. So make a lot of dua for yourself, and also when you have to interact with anyone, this is the best dua that we can make. Now, deep down towards verse number 89, another important message has been given to us. Illa man ata Allahi biqalbin salim. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about how this thing is going to benefit us on the day of resurrection, that's the time the people who will benefit are the ones who have qalb salim, a very peaceful, very safe heart. Now, this is something that we have to understand over here. What is this qalb salim? One of the scholars said, if the kings and their descendants understand our condition, they will fight us with swords to obtain our status. Now that is Qalb Salim, when you are so content with yourself. How do you get this contentment of heart? Because in these days, this is our heart which is going through anxiety, depression, talk about jealousy, negativity, aggressive thoughts and attitudes, and stinginess, and I mean, like, all the negativity is inside our heart. The first thing, you have to protect your heart from shirk. Second thing, you have to protect your heart from bid'ah, which is innovation in the religion. Follow it as purely as it is given in Quran and Sunnah. Third, when you protect your heart from haram desires and heedlessness. Fourth, if you become casual about the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is going to be issue for you. And then you have to have protection of sincerity. Whatever you do it for sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We also have over here story of Lut alayhi salam and his people who were engaged in homosexuality. Homosexuality is becoming a challenge for all the Muslims all over the world. And you know, it was in 1945 when there was a UN charter which talked about the basic human rights. There was no mention of anything like the same-sex marriages or rights of the homosexual. Now, this story began around 1995 when the first term, when the people were talking about the female rights, they talked about sexual orientation. And down in 2011, the human rights, the gay movements, and the female movements, they merge together and they come up with this thing that it's about my life, it's about my body, however I want to see myself, it's a free society. But we find out that in 2018 onward, there are 28 countries which has made it legal. 70 countries where the gays have their right, and all the Muslim countries and many African countries and even some non-Muslim countries, for them it's still a criminal activity. And the impacts down the lane 50 years from now are immense, and we need to be thinking about it. And the Muslims are also badly affected. So we need to educate ourselves in this, and inshallah we'll be talking little more about this as we move on. So the next surah that we reach is Surah Naml, and this is a surah which talks about Dawud alayhi salam and Sulaiman alayhi salam, the prophets who had magnificent kingdom and who had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted them unique kind of qualities, and how they use their power, and with this power they never got deluded, and they were very much connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And very beautifully we have this dua that is the verse number 14 on Surah Naml, which says, Rabbi awzini an ashkura ni'mataka allati an'amta alayya wa ala walidayya wa an a'mala salihan tarda wa adkhilni bi rahmatika fi ibadika salihin. Very beautiful dua, and you should make use of this dua. It says, O Rabb, inspire me to render thanks for your favors. So the first thing we have to have in our life is gratitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which you have bestowed on me and my parents. Like, no matter what status we acquire in our life, we have to be always thinking how our parents took care of us. Many a times when kids feel that our parents had either been too busy, or they did not have, or we did not click together, or we did not have that kind of relationship, even then you need to have gratitude and you need to have humility towards how your parents raised you, and to do such good deeds that will please you, and admit me by your mercy among your righteous servants. So remember, our deeds are not going to take us towards Jannah. It's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which is going to help us go towards Jannah. Otherwise, we will, even towards the very end, will be not as perfect as the system Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for us in Jannah. So over here, a very sound personality has been talked about, and very sound system has been brought to us. That is through the gratitude. So remember the messages that we have talked about today. We have talked about the friendship, we have talked about the qadr, we have talked about having lot of balances in our life, and these balances are really important. And that is why we have been told in a hadith that example of a good believer and a bad believer. Good believer, a good companion is like a perfume seller, and the impact you take from them. And a good bad companion is like the seller of the blacksmith. If you enter a blacksmith shop, how you're going to be impacted by that. So make this dua, Rabbi habli hukman wal hikni bis salihin, and may ask Allah Ta'ala so that He gives you this furqan and wisdom to have this righteousness in your life. We finish off with the dua, Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim wa tub alayna innaka antat tawwabur rahim. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.